Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space, so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today and become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's Podgo at podgo.co, and be sure to add my podcast in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Welcome to the Heavy Sweater Podcast. My name is John King. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, this is the Heavy Sweater Podcast, a deep dive into the beginnings of Australian musicians and bands of the heavy variety. This week we've got a 2-for-1 special as we have Emma and Andy from the Beau project on the podcast. We get into their beginnings in heavy music as well as the beginnings of the Beau project and things they were doing before the band. Wild shit. Absolutely wild stuff. We also talk about the new track Fall to the Beast and the meaning behind that song. It's Emma's personal journey through depersonalization and derealization and how that doesn't define her. And if you've never heard of that before, go Google it. Go check out videos on YouTube, because I didn't know about it before receiving an email to talk to this band. So I educated myself, because knowledge is power. So if you want to know more about this, go Google it and educate yourself. Anyway, that's a really fucking powerful message. And we also touch on the old guard of like the misogyny and sexism in heavy music, and if you obviously, if you're listening to this, you know what I'm fucking talking about, that like that deathcore misogyny is bullshit, and how that lingered in music for a while, but now it's gone. We got rid of it for the most part, which is fucking sick. So anyway, with all that being said, it is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Hey guys, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. How you going?
Good, man.
Yeah, we're good.
Excellent. Sick. Well, we'll get straight into like everything from like heavies for both of yous. And where does it begin for both of yous? Like, what's the first heavy song you guys remember hearing?
Oh, it's going to be very different for me and Beau.
Yeah?
I think I grew up with a lot of heavy stuff. So I think maybe the first. Do you classify Nirvana as heavy?
Yeah. Anything that's
Okay.
like a bit of tone. Yeah.
That might have been my gateway. Actually, I'll take that back. I reckon the first heavy track, which I'll probably define as heavy, is do you remember a band called Tism? Remember
No.
those guys called Tism? Ah, okay. They're like an Aussie band. They were kind of
Okay,
like
sick.
like this kind of like dancey kind of band in the 90s. These five
Okay.
blokes just like go ballistic on stage. But it would have been them, then Nirvana, then I reckon Metallica was the gateway drug to Pantera,
Oh,
was the
yeah.
gateway drug to Meshuggah, and then so on and so on and so on.
Sick. Fuck yeah, cool. What about you, Emma? Or Bo? Which would you
Yeah,
prefer to be called?
I don't mind. Usually
Okay, cool.
Beau. Everyone in the
Okay.
band calls me that. Yeah,
Okay,
no,
cool.
but I don't know. I grew up like with really like artistic, eclectic parents, so I
Okay.
kind of learned how to play classical violin from the age of 8.
Crazy.
So yeah, I know. So I started out like that, and then I didn't sing until like my late teens. Like I was a late bloomer with singing.
Okay.
But yeah, my mom was really into, I don't know, random stuff. Like she'd listen to Black Sabbath and go to their concerts.
Fuck
And
yeah, that's
then
so sick.
I know. And then I don't know, she was into Zeppelin and then a little bit of Iron Maiden. And I don't know, I kind of got my first taste, I guess, there. My dad was into like classical music, which
Okay.
I think relates to metal
Yeah,
in massive ways, to be
100%.
honest. Yeah, musically. So yeah, it kind of all came together like that, I guess.
Cool. And then from there, like, I'm guessing, like, once those beginning bands, like, sparked your interest, you just, like, dived in
Yeah,
on your
yeah,
own.
definitely. I kind of met Andy first with music stuff. So he was drumming and we kind of both wanted to do something different than what we were playing live in these other bands.
Okay.
So then we met the other two guys and they were fully into it. Our guitarist, Jack, his dad plays in all these metal bands. So
Sick.
I know. So it was like this really awesome progression into what we've become now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're kind of doing like a lot of like session work for
Yeah,
other bands. So we,
Okay.
even though we kind of grew up listening to heavy stuff, like Beau was saying, we've all kind of got like different genres that we're sort of trained in, and so we were spending a lot of time playing all these other bands, other genres, not really doing our own stuff. And then, yeah, I guess this band that we're running now, the Atomic Bow Project, is kind of like bringing stuff back to our roots, I guess.
Sick. Yeah, yeah.
mm,
Just like giving yourselves the creative fulfillment opposed to being session musicians.
totally. Yep, it's
Yeah,
Sick.
so
for sure.
fulfilling. Yeah.
Cool. And then from like finding out about heavy music, what makes you, Andy, pick up an instrument and you, Emma, like want to start singing?
I think it was for me. It was like when I was young, they used to do all these like underage gigs.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
used to do these like underage punk gigs and stuff like that. It'd have like
Oh, yes.
Friends or Rom, like Body Jar, all these kind of like punk bands were like really big back in the day. And I think that was
Yeah.
kind of like my really big first taste of like a wild kind of crowd. So I was already playing drums then, but I was playing like the school bands and stuff like that, you know.
Okay, yeah.
I think seeing those bands, it was like the taste of like being a bit more rock and roll, which is kind of cool. And then that kind of things went from there, I guess.
Sick.
Yeah, I'd kind of agree. And just like, I don't know, I guess for me, I wanted to write more extreme songs about the things I love, like real fiction sort of
Okay,
themes
cool.
and stuff like that. And I wasn't able to do that. And then I found metal, I guess, and I'm able to like get everything that's in me out now, like
Yeah, yeah.
properly. Like you can write about anything in metal where you can't do that in like pop or
Yeah, for
folk or
sure.
whatever genre, you know?
Yeah. That's sick, especially with like the fiction thing, like coming from your background of being like Sabbath and Zeppelin, like
Yeah.
Dio
Yeah.
Sabbath is like fairy tale stuff, which is sick.
Totally. Yes. Like I
Um,
just love that. It's just so creative compared to anything else we've ever done.
Yeah,
And I think that's why this band has just felt really natural for all of us, like compared to anything we've ever done.
yeah,
It just all clicks.
yeah. The freedom you get from heavy music is like unparalleled.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Nothing like it.
Sick. And then like you guys, we use like outside of session musicians, we use like in other bands around the scene.
what have we done over the years? We've done, I mean, I've played in and out of metal bands for a while, but this is the first one I've done in a fair few years. But we were doing
All
like,
sorts of stuff, like
yeah,
from classical to like folky stuff. We played at all like the festivals in Australia, like
Okay, sick.
Woodford and yeah,
yeah.
and I played as a violinist for like Casey Chambers and
That
I was like on
hold
The
the fuck up.
Voice.
Whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, 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 whoa. That's sick.
It was cool. It was cool. Like it's funny because yeah, I do those gigs or I played a violin on The Voice and stuff and
Whoa.
Andy's also yeah, done some cool stuff, but it's again that yearning for something different and something
Yeah, yeah.
that's not so standard all the time. Like The Voice is great, but you know, that sort of music kind of wasn't like lighting the fire.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sick. That's crazy. That's blown my fucking mind.
Uh,
That's hectic. Cool. Sick. And then you guys come together with this and you've put out a bunch of tracks already. And what was like the writing process like coming into this project?
So this whole project was like, like Bo was saying, like we kind of wanted to come at it from like, let's just write about like whatever the fuck we want to write about.
Yeah.
And I think when we originally started doing it, it was just me and Bo basically doing everything ourselves. You know, we were like
mm,
poor uni students. Like you try to record a track and it's like thousands of dollars. And so we just sort of said, fuck it, let's try and figure this out ourselves.
Yeah.
So we just sort of figured out taught ourselves how to like produce and mix and do this kind of work. And so a lot of the sort of the writing process has just been basically whatever we wanted to come up with at the time. And so the first few tracks, it's kind of a weird story, but the first few tracks that we wrote, I was really into this like really into a lot of fiction, like really into a lot of like sci-fi horror fiction.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was really reading into this kind of like this online fiction sort of page community. They're called SCP.
Okay.
And basically, what it is, it's like it's almost like people will write their own kind of like fictional stories about there's this like secret organization that harbors all these kind of like supernatural entities, and then everyone will write like a story saying like, oh, here's what this entity is, here's where it came from, here's the kind of story about it. And there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of these kind of stories, and the community's massive. Like it's like millions and millions and millions of people worldwide, and have like games about it now, and like art and all this stuff. And so I was reading a lot of this at the time that we started this band. Sort of the first few tracks were kind of like inspired by some of those
Mm.
stories that I was reading,
Okay.
and you can sort of see like even when you jump on our YouTube on a lot of our earlier songs, like a lot of the comments are like people from that community who had cottoned onto the fact that we're writing about this stuff that they love so much. And so you'll probably see some like bizarre comments, they'll say like, "Oh,
Okay.
what what SCP is this from?" Which is like the organization that they're writing
Okay.
about. What's this SCP?
Mm.
So people are often reading our comments like, "What the fuck? Like, who are these people?"
Yeah.
So good
Yeah.
though.
Really
It's so good
fair.
to have that support. Like we were very
Yeah,
lucky
yeah,
that we
yeah.
found this niche,
Yeah.
market, and it just took off for us. I guess that's most of our views on YouTube. Like it was
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Oh, they're awesome. And they're really supportive, and because we're writing
Mm,
stuff about something that really passionate for, like they're very passionate for us. It's like
Yeah.
this really
yeah.
reciprocal relationship that we have with those kind of fans.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's so sick. Like, I think concept albums and concept music is like so like not done. It's not done enough, but when it is done, it's
Yeah,
insane. Like the big
Yeah.
ones are like My Chem, Black Parade, and stuff like that.
yeah,
But like there are crazy concept like albums and releases. But I think it's not done enough in heavy music because it's so hard to do.
Mm,
yeah. It's like that Devon Townsend stuff. I think it's like that weird albums about like the one of them I was listening to is like the whole album is about some alien or something like that.
Sick. Of course it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Love it.
yeah, typical. But
Yeah.
yeah. So like we really dig that stuff. But I think over time we've sort of started to write more stuff that was less to do with the SCP stuff, but still like heavily inspired by that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like our last few tracks are probably more down that route as well.
Okay. And
Yeah, I
then
think we're lucky. Oh,
oh,
sorry.
it's all good.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, I think we're lucky because we produce it all ourselves, like just in a room. We can just change our lyrics or change what we, want to sing about in like 2 seconds, and
Yeah.
that's really been a good influence as well. Like we're not in a studio, like we're not locked in to having to have it perfect like that day. And I
Yeah.
think Andy kind of underplays it, but he produces all our music. And he just learnt like one day he never went to uni for it. Like he's like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. So everything everyone hears has just been made in the bedroom of Andy's
That's
house.
sick because
Like,
it sounds so well. It's like really
yeah,
well
yeah.
mixed and produced and stuff. I think like through doing the podcast, I've found like a lot of bands are finding the ways around having to not spend the big money because even in my band, we produce everything ourselves. Like we are like hectic
Yes,
DIY because if you don't have the money, you don't have the money and you can't put out what you write.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So I
I
fuck with
think
that mentality hard.
I love that. And I
totally.
think it's kind of badass too, like being like, nah, fuck off. Like we don't have
Yeah.
to spend like $60,000. Like it's kind of like
Yeah.
shoving it to the man, because I know like everyone's got to eat and stuff, but it's us too. Like
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's taken a lot of control out of like the industry and putting it really into like the producer's hands as well, like the guys making the music.
Yeah.
So you don't need this like big kind of like album loan anymore from a label
No.
to make stuff.
Yeah.
You just go on YouTube. Some 10-year-old kid will teach you how to mix like
Exactly.
raw ball and stuff.
Yeah.
You just follow his tutorial and then you're good to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, literally. I
So
did the
good.
same thing for my band like a couple of weeks ago now. Like I just made a lyric video because I was like, we need one. We don't have the money to pay for one. I'll just
Yeah.
hit up Adobe Premiere Pro, stock footage and a couple of tutorials, pump it out in 7 days.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, totally.
That's wicked. And I think it actually makes you more creative though, like in your
yeah,
band. Like we found that
Yeah.
like our film clips, again, we kind of did it all ourselves, but like we were just so much more creative than if we just relied on somebody else the whole time to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because
totally.
like you don't want to make your band look silly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And there's like creativity in the constraints that you have with that as well. It's like, yeah, we don't have like, oh, I guess the videography stuff's a good example, you know, like we don't have like these like $1 million cameras and like all the gear that these big production companies will have. And I think within that, you have to compensate by being more creative.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then you guys just put out a new track, which I heard before I even got hit up about it. It's fucking so sick. Fall to the Beast. It is a ripper. It's like so like different from like every other like metal thing popping up at the moment, like the little EDM like dance beat in the chorus.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
so sick. Yeah. So tell me a bit more about that, because that's like got a message behind it with the lyrics of like depersonalization and derealization. So if you guys want to talk about that, that'd be sick.
Yeah, I don't know if you know much about it yourself, John, but derealization and depersonalization comes often with anxiety, but sometimes it can come from having a bad hit like drug use or something like that. Not for me. Mine was anxiety. I'm quite cool. So I had it, and it's basically like a symptom of just feeling unreal. Like it's like your body isn't real, and it's the most bizarre thing to try to describe to anyone who hasn't felt it. Like it's just one of those things. It's like trying to describe depression to someone who hasn't felt it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just be like, just be happy. Like it doesn't work like that. So it's a very odd experience and something I've been through, and I still have it. But I deal with it pretty well now. And kind of wrote it about just falling to that feeling and letting it be there, and just living your life, with something, and just going full steam ahead, I guess.
Yeah, that's so sick. That's that's a super strong message, because like I hadn't heard about it until like I read the email, and I was like, I've got to read more about this, because this is like so new to me. And like reading about it, I was like, whoa, like this is hectic. And then like I fuck with that message of like going through it but not letting it like define you or cripple you, like pushing through that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the main point. It's nice to hear that you actually Googled it, because I think a lot of people hear about these sorts of things and they're just like, oh, whatever, it doesn't affect me. Like, it doesn't matter. So that's really cool. But Andy is a psychologist as well as our drummer and producer, so he knows a bit about it as well.
A man of many talents.
He is, and he's doing a PhD on depersonalization at the moment.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's we're mega nerds.
Sick.
That's my jam.
Sick.
The brain.
Yeah.
I love this weird shit. Yeah.
Cool. That's excellent. And there's like the next bunch of stuff you're going to be putting out more like that, like writing from your perspective opposed to writing of like from a theme.
I think we're going to do a bit of both. I think it'll be a mix of like our OG, and then we're working on another one right now that's probably a bit more personally, from a personal experience. I don't want to give too much away.
I think
that's excellent.
I think we like to write stuff as well that's kind of got like different layers to it, like Fall to the Beast is a pretty good example. Like if you didn't know the backstory, you might just think it's kind of like a bit of like a sci-fi fantasy kind of track, but like below it, there's another level, which is like a personal like experience, like Beau, like DP and DR. I think we like to write like that, like there's a superficial kind of story to what's going on, but there's also a meaning that you take from the song yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Leaving it up to interpretation, but putting what you want in it.
Yeah. And I do want to mention, just because this is a podcast, if anyone does have DPDR and they're listening, like there's a lot of hope with it. Like it can feel like it can bring on a lot of really dark thoughts as well. And I went through that, but like if you get help with it, like it's definitely not a life sentence thing.
And for sure.
There's a lot of treatment out there for it, because I think it's really important. Like you can look up depersonalization on read it and then you think your life is like fucked and you're going to die, and
Yeah.
it's just, you know, a doom and gloom thing, but it's totally like, I've realized eventually that it's not. Like,
Yeah, that's excellent.
you can get on with life, you know, and do cool shit, and yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Don't
Yeah.
fall victim to the internet wormholes.
Oh, definitely. Big time.
Everything is death. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, once I had like a sore side, and then I like WebMD'd myself, and I had diverticulitis, but I was
Oh my
fine.
goodness.
Yeah. So,
Oh, I do that. And like my toe is like a little bit sore. It's like you've got toe cancer. I'm
yeah.
like, oh no,
Specifically, yeah.
specifically.
That's insane. That's so sick. I like fuck with that so heavy. It's like such a strong message. I think people like, as much as mental health is like more prominent now than ever of like awareness, I think like it's still like something that people need to be reminded of like there are different levels to it, and there's like different stuff that people don't know about, and spreading awareness in any way possible.
Definitely, I agree.
Sure.
And talking about it whenever we can and checking on people, I think is really important too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
you guys have new music coming up. Any timeline for that?
Oh,
We've got
Or is that on the hush?
cover. We've got a cover. We're actually just recording a cover track at the moment, so that'll probably be out before the end of the year, and I think we'll probably have new music out early next year.
Cool. Sick.
Yeah,
lots
so
of plans.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Well, we might start to wind it down. And
Cool.
thanks both of you for doing the podcast. It's sick.
Thanks for having us.
It's all good anytime. We'll get into individually your top 5 favorite bands of any genre, artists of any genre. And
Oh,
then
shit.
Yeah.
You go first, Andy.
Oh shit, this is putting me on the spot. Where do I start? All right, I'll give you reasons why.
All right.
That's not doing it. Okay, my top 5 are not in any order.
Yep.
So, one of them is a band called Briar. They're kind of like a symphonic-y, proggy band from the Netherlands. It's like a female-fronted vocalist, and we're really digging them at the moment because we draw lots of inspirations for them, and I reckon they're like massively underrated. So probably Briar's up there.
Sweet.
Probably my next one would be, I'm actually listening to a lot of Ghostman at the moment. Like
Ghostman keeps coming up in the podcast.
Yeah, it's kind of like, because I think everyone's always looking like what's coming up next for heavy music, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I think like we keep getting heavier and heavier and heavier with the guitar. The guitars get lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
The drums just get like massive and massive and massive. And so people are thinking like, where does the limit come to that, to where we start to morph into something else? And I sort of look at Ghostman and say, well, maybe that's kind of that's what's coming up, or maybe not. I guess he's someone who's trying to like push the genre a little bit, and I kind of really like that.
Yeah.
These my second. God, my top 5. I reckon my third would be. I have to go back to my high school, and I have to say Muse is up there.
Muse.
Yeah, I
Wild.
like so hard. I reckon he's just a legend. Good songwriter, great overall player, plays keys, guitar like a motherfucker, writes like a motherfucker. It's awesome. 4 would be, I would have to say probably really like Poppy, if you know Poppy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think we borrow a lot of inspiration from Poppy.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and my number 5 would probably be, probably have to be Pantera, just because I love massive fan of Dimebag's playing.
Yeah. The best. The best.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think mine are going to be really similar. So
Okay.
yeah, sorry, just to make it boring, but
Remember,
no,
it's any
still
genre.
any genre. Oh my God, so hard though. But I think I made the number 1, just history-wise. Like I just still always go back to it. You know, like it's just my comfort music. It just feels good all the time. Zeppelin, again, I know it's not that exciting, but it's it's just that comfort thing. And I think there's nothing wrong with music making us feel comfortable,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
like it can be like a really good anti-anxiety thing to just listen to the same shit over and over
For
that you
sure,
love.
yeah. And Zeppelin,
Yeah.
like, at the time, revolutionary.
Oh, totally.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
completely. Like they were heavy for the time. Like
Yeah. Even
we're
now,
lucky.
like, that whole lot of love riff is a motherfucker of a riff.
Yes,
It is so
agreed.
sick.
So good. So yeah, also Poppy, but again, that's probably just because I'm very inspired by her
Yeah,
at the moment. And I think it's just awesome to see chicks in these kind of bands.
definitely.
Yeah. And I think the first taste of that for me was the Cranberries. And I know that's
Okay.
going to sound quite soft in comparison to everything else, but again, back in like the early 90s and late 80s, there wasn't a lot of women fronting rock
No,
bands.
no, like
Yeah.
barely any, like Fleetwood Mac and Lita Ford,
Yeah.
probably before them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I just love that, and like her in her like docs and shit again before that was like
Yeah.
cool, you know. So when I was like, I don't know, like I was really little, like 8 or something, I saw her and I was like, I want to do that. Like that'd be sick. And then probably Muse, just like
As
Andy,
well.
like
Sick.
oh, I love Muse, love British rock. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's my
Cool.
vibe.
Sick. Well, now that you've mentioned it, like we might as well get into that because like
Yeah.
there for a long time there was like a lot of misogyny in heavy music, especially like
Mhm.
the more grindcore side of music. It was very like no women allowed, but like fuck that.
Ugh, right. Yeah, I didn't
No
even know
time for
that
that.
really. I've seen it in other areas, trust me, but
Yeah.
yeah, right.
It was just like it was kind of like that, just like yeah, a bit like tacky and tasteless. But then I think like bands like I Wrestled a Bear once like sort of bucked that stereotype, and now like there's heaps of women in heavy music, and I think that's like refreshing as fuck.
I love that.
Yeah,
That like we have a little goal is to get on what's the playlist called, Andy, on Spotify? Is it women in heavy
maybe
music? Oh,
Heavy
can't
Queens
remember.
or something like that. I
Heavy
think.
Queens or something. There's
Sick.
like this sick, like, yeah, I'm like, oh, one day that would be so cool.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but
Yeah,
there's just so many women getting into heavy music, and
yeah,
I think we always belonged there. So it's pretty cool.
yeah, for sure, definitely. There's like the thing I like reference back to it is like heavy music and like punk and hardcore was all about like bucking societal norms, and in the
Yeah.
beginnings of those genres, like sexism was prominent. So why wouldn't the societal norm trend to go against as sexism?
Yeah,
oh,
totally. And I
totally.
think I don't know if any of your listeners have seen our video for The King, but that was kind of a part of that video clip that we made.
Sick.
I think it was kind of Andy's idea actually, but having like that female queen and being kind of like a decimator to these dudes that were
Yeah.
in the clip, like it
Oh
was
yeah,
yeah, it kind of had these like Cersei vibes if you're into, you know, Game of
Yeah,
Thrones or
yeah,
whatever, but just no like getting with a brother, but like
yeah.
you know, just that
like
power.
it's like the reverse of power thing where you see like the male, using their positions of power to manipulate
Exactly.
women
Yeah.
in like
Yeah.
in film and music, and sort of we just wanted to flip that on its head.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's shit people should be saying and like making apparent of like that still happens even though it shouldn't, and people should know better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And
for
it's nice
sure.
again, like having that even for me brought up on a podcast. Like it doesn't even get talked about that much. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, you're there. But like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like it takes a lot to get here for females.
For
And I think it's
sure.
really cool that you recognize it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, like on a local level, the grind of a band is like insane. Like you have to grind it out so hard. I can only imagine being a female wanting to get into heavy music, like the gatekeeping of that to break through to then get to the grind of being in a local band.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. And I think like I've even had that, no one's ever said it, but that feeling like, oh, like, you know, I don't know, when I've been at certain gigs, like, oh, this is the female one. Like, yeah, but
Yeah.
like, I don't really want to be like singled out then either as just being like, oh, this is the
Yeah,
female
yeah.
in
Or
this
just like
band.
this is
Like,
another sick band that's about to play.
yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly
sure.
right. Like, it kind of like you just go with it because you don't want to be offensive or whatever. But
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, oh, I want to just be the same.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's
totally.
tricky.
Yeah. But that's
We're
sick. You
getting
guys
there.
are crushing and like doing your own thing and doing stuff that's different on all levels, which is so sick to see.
Thank you. No,
Awesome.
we really
Thank you.
appreciate
Oh,
it.
good. Thanks for being on the podcast. And we'll get to your socials and then shut it all the way down.
Woohoo. Are you gonna do it, Andy, or am I gonna do it?
Yeah, you do the shout out.
The shout out. Yeah, well, okay. You can find us on the socials. No, I'm kidding. But we're on Instagram, the Atomic Beau Project, and we're on TikTok now, actually, and
Sick.
Facebook. So we're in a few places. Yeah, TikTok's kind of, we were like, are we meant to be on TikTok? Like, is this our vibe? But it's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's kind of a weird line to toe. Like my band started on TikTok and then we started like posting
Yeah.
stuff. Then they were like ripping out audio from our content. And it was like, why are we even posting it then? Like we own the songs.
Oh shit, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then people,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
apparently that's good. I feel like I didn't know it was good either, but then I learnt later, apparently that's what you want. Like,
Really?
yeah, you want people like taking your song and then using it on theirs, and apparently
no,
it's
like-
kind of like,
Not even that. Like TikTok just won't let the music play on our content.
oh shit,
Ah.
oh okay,
It's like, no,
no,
you don't own it. And I'm like, I own it. I wrote it.
I own, I wrote it, bro.
Yeah.
Shit, no,
I'm
that's
still
tricky,
myself.
but
Yeah.
yeah, we're trying. Oh yeah, and our YouTube. Sorry, I forgot to
That's
say
all
our
good.
YouTube. That's one of our faves. So
We're
yeah,
on pretty much everything, hey.
all of
Yeah.
them.
Atomic Beau Project on everything.
Not
Yeah.
only fans, but everything else.
All right. Everything else.
Yeah.
Sick. Cool, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
And we're done for another week. A huge thank you to Andy and Emma, both great people doing absolutely fucking sick stuff. And be on the lookout for new music from the Atomic Beau Project and go check them out on all social media platforms and listen to them wherever you listen to music. And if you like what I'm doing here with the podcast, fucking share it. Tell a friend. Subscribe, follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. And on Instagram and Facebook at Heavy Sweater Podcast. And a little update from the weekend, if you didn't listen to last week's episode or the week before that, I've been plugging some shows. Toowoomba and Nambour were fucking excellent. It was so sick to just go back to Nambour, old stomping grounds. And yeah, Black Box Theatre rips. That is a fucking venue and a half. That is so sick. But yeah, heaps of fucking cool bands. And in all honesty, do yourself a favor and listen to Dissect. Dissect are fucking so sick. Check them the fuck out. And a massive thank you to everybody that came out. And a huge thank you to Isolation for having us. We'll be doing it again in a couple of weeks at Golby's Basement in Ipswich. So yeah, come back next week for a new episode. Thanks. Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space, so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today and become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's Podgo at podgo.co, and be sure to add my podcast in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application.